Hello and welcome to my Learn With Me Minifreak series. This is episode 18, a Glimmering Drone. So first, what is Learn With Me? Learn With Me is a series where you follow my end-to-end process in learning to get the best out of a synthesizer. In this case, it is the Arturia Minifreak. So far, we've explored all the major features of the synthesizer and we've designed a couple of sounds. Today, we're going to design another. To be clear, I haven't pre-designed these sounds, but rather I take the title of the episode, which I came up with, to motivate the creation of a sound. My hope is that you will therefore see me navigating the synthesizer and navigating the sound design process to get further insight into how useful the synthesizer would be to you. Let's start by creating an init patch and create our Glimmering drone. So the first thing I'm thinking of when I think Glimmering drone is the core timbre is going to be very important. Additionally, because it's a drone, we're going to need a way to perform that. And I think that performance is going to be the mod wheel, the macros. I was thinking maybe aftertouch, but I think in order to perform a drone, I'd like to be able to latch a chord in place and then have access to the panel. Since I'm going to be using the mod wheel I have access to 3 times 3 is 9 plus the additional 4. So we have 13 modulation destinations for the mod wheel, and the macros can target up to 4 destinations each. They can target all the panel controls and they can actually target the intensities of values in the mod matrix. So I think both of those are going to be important. Another thing I was thinking about is if I turn the attack, decay and release down and the sustain down, I can use the sustain like a volume control. Now, there seems to be a tiny tick at the beginning of this, but I think that's acceptable. For now, since I'm working on the sound, I'm going to leave the envelope in a very different shape, but that is where it's going to end up. In terms of what the macros are going to do, I'm thinking that the mod wheel, I would like to open up the sound. So that's probably going to be adjusting the volume, probably going to be adjusting the cutoff, maybe going to be adjusting some of the effect parameters. And the macros I would like to be 2 quite distinctly different timbral changes. I don't know exactly what those are going to be. We'll see. Drone, I'm thinking complex timbre. So let's try and find ourselves a complex timbre. Okay, that's one tone for one oscillator. I think I'm going to leave it in that register. Then I'm going to turn that oscillator down and I'm going to bring in the second oscillator. So let's just turn it up and let's pick a different, that was, let's see where else I should go. Okay, so let's listen to the volumes. Let's put these both around about the 50% level and see what that sounds like. So I think that works. The next thing I think I'm going to need to work on is what my modulation sources are going to be. So the envelope is not going to do me much good because that envelope is going to be only controlled by the sustain. Although, interestingly, if I use the envelope as a modulation source and then I modulate sustain, then the sustain level is going to implicitly adjust everything else that is adjusted. So I could even use the envelope as a sort of meta macro. Anyway, let's bring our modulation sources in. Let's go for non-tempo synced. To start with, I'm just going to set these to triangles, and I'm going to set this to a looping envelope, and I'm going to try and make it a triangle as well. So I'm going to start with these relatively fast, and then I'm going to adjust the rates going forward. But for now, I'm just going to have these things going quite quickly. They're not rooted anywhere yet. So what would I like to move? I think I might like the volumes of the different oscillator types to move. So let's oscillator 1 volume, oscillator 2 volume, and let's adjust those with the 2 LFOs respectively. Let's just hear how that sounds. Turn oscillator 2 down. Sounds okay. And now I'm going to turn oscillator 1 down so I can hear oscillator 2 for the second adjustment that I wanted to make. And then I can turn them both back up. So because both of the envelopes are re-triggering, and because they're set to the same rate, they're happening in lockstep. So I think what I'll do is just change the rates a little. That's okay. Now sound-wise filter. I would like to use the bandpass filter, but it feels like the bandwidth of the bandpass filter is too narrow and I lose too much of the timbre, so I think I'm going to have to use a low pass. So this is interesting. Remember I mentioned possibility of controlling multiple parameters with this sustain. So here, the sustain is adjusting both the amplifier and the cutoff. So I already like the concept of doing that, and I've already done it, even though I wasn't intending to do it. So I've kept the sound quite dark at the moment, because I'm planning on brightening the sound up with some of the other parameters that I'm going to adjust. Let's open that filter. So I think some animation of the filter using this cycling envelope would be good. So cycling envelope to filter cutoff. So notice that I turned the resonance way up so I could more clearly hear that animate. we have the ability to adjust the shape. But I think since we've been using triangle waves for these LFOs, then it probably makes sense to use the same shape here. This is going to be synchronized with the key press polyphonically, so I think I should set the trigger modes here to be the same. So that's keyboard poly, that's keyboard poly. The reason I'm going keyboard poly and not free is so what I was just thinking of there is one of the sources for the keyboard is randomization, so I could possibly use that to have variation per key. But what I was looking for is a way to vary the phase but keep the speed the same. So if I go, then each of those notes is playing in a different phase. It feels like it would also be interesting to have them play at a different rate. So I think then what I will do is I will put in a keyboard source to be random. Should I go random? No, I'm going to use velocity instead. I think the reason to use velocity here is that velocity, if I aim to press the keys at about the same velocity, they will never be exactly the same. So I think it's a good source to use here. So I'm not going to use aftertouch. The aftertouch velocity row is going to only be velocity in this case. And the keyboard source, I'm going to leave it as linear because I don't really have a purpose for it at the moment. But I'm going to have that modulate the rate. Unfortunately, it's going to use 1, 2, 3, 4 of my assignable destinations, but what can we do? So that's 1, the next page, 2, 3, 4. Go back to the first page, and we're going to have velocity adjust then the LFO rate. If I make this very high, you hear that like a buzzing noise. That's almost like an audio rate modulation happening there. I'm going to have to make this a lot more subtle than that. So the different notes are going to be out of phase with one another, and they're also going to run at different rates. Let's go for 2.5 arbitrary units. Let's do the same thing here with the other LFO rates. We can go, if I do this negatively 2.5 for no particular reason, let's try this slope here. What if I put this significantly negative? I'm thinking that this, if I adjust these differently, that's -15. If we adjust them differently, we'll be able to get a different slope. So if one of them goes -15, one of them goes +15, what I'm going to do is my triangle shape is going to shift into... Remember that these rates are going to be decreased when we go to actual performance here. Okay, a lot of variation going on there. Now I'm going to put some effects in place. Then I'm going to complete the modulations. I have 3 more destinations here. Then I'm going to use also I'm going to put the performance controls in, which are going to be by way of the mod wheel and the macros. So let's just listen to this sound. I'm going to latch it just to... Doesn't work. So this is one of my modulation parameters. So I'm just going to leave this running relatively quiet, and I'm going to start finding the effects I want. Though I don't necessarily like how this distortion is sounding, I think having this available is going to be good. So I think gain is going to be a parameter that I adjust. So let's just put that in place. Let's go to the next effect plot. I'm quite liking the chorus here. So I like the space that the lush chorus gives. So I think I'm going to go wet dry again here. The final effect feels like it has to be a reverb. And I think as I've been doing quite a lot, I'm going to change the reverb to an insert. So we have access to the 100% wet. So I think I'm going to adjust the damping as a parameter. For those parameters, I'm going to use the mod wheel to adjust. So let's go and start putting those in place. Actually, it didn't really work too well, did it? The reason I say that didn't work too well is I want the mod wheel to adjust the sustain level. I suppose I can use the sustain knob as one of the performance parameters. So now I'm going to use 4. So I think that works. So the mod wheel is going to adjust what? Let's go have a look. This is the mod wheel row. My mod wheel is down. So I'm going to have the mod wheel capable of opening the cutoff a bit. Put the mod wheel, oops, it's the macro. Put the mod wheel up. There's the mod wheel. Now let's look at the effect parameters. So I put those on the third page. One of them is the time parameter, which is actually the gain on the distortion. So I'm going to have the gain increase. Next parameter I took was amount of chorus. So I'm going to have the mod wheel increase the amount of chorus, and finally dry on the reverb. Okay, now to the macros. So I think the macros, it might be interesting to adjust some of these levels. But this cutoff modulation is currently at 17. What if I have one of the macros adjust that level? So if I turn this from 17 down to, let's say, 5, then this macro can assign to that value. I can have it, I'm not sure. So that's set to 12. So that means that brings in that pulsing there. Let's go back to the first page. And these two movements as well, I have them set to 13 and 12. I take those both down to 5. This is another movement parameter that I've got. Then I can add 7 to this one, and I can subtract 7 to that one. So let's go pick these. That's this one. And here I'm going to add 7, I said. I've done 8, which is fine. This one can be this slot, and I can subtract 8. So this is movement here. No, I don't think that's the right parameter there, so I can go back and delete that. Second effect. That's the rate of the chorus. So this macro is all about speed. The macro's done. About how much motion is happening. Let's go to the final macro. I think this should be about timbre then, because the other ones are adjusting the rate type of parameters here. So how will I adjust the timbre? So the timbre, one thing I could do with the timbre is adjust the damping on the reverb. Not really a strong enough adjustment, so let's try some of the other parameters here. So let's go for the wave parameter on oscillator 1. So this is interesting because it sounds like the pitch has shifted up. But what if I adjust the pitch down? They don't quite scale the same way, which is unfortunate, so I think I'm just going to have to abandon that plan. that gives us a change. Let's try some of these other parameters. So I think we can increase both the noise and the rectify parameters. So let's go for... So let's see if there's something in the second oscillator we can adjust. So I think the asymmetry is the one. Let's turn all of these down, and that one down as well. And let's now slow down these envelopes, LFOs, so that's 6. That can be the same 6. Let's have this, whatever long constitutes, 96. I don't know what that means in terms of actual length. And now I'm going to latch a chord. Maybe 6 notes. Okay, and now I'll attempt to perform this. Okay, so there we go. A drone patch, relatively playable and expressive. Obviously, there are more opportunities for making expression and fine-tuning, but I think I'm quite pleased with where we got to. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you'll join me for some more episodes, but in any case, thank you very much for joining me today, and goodbye.